church on Memorial Day, a little boy named Alex was in the church foyer, and he was looking at this big plaque on the wall that had names and little flags on them. And the minister saw him, Alex, staring at this plaque for quite a while. And then so the pastor walked over and said, "What are you doing, Alex?" And he goes, "I'm looking at this plaque." He goes, "Can you tell me what this is for?" And the minister said, "Well, those are the folks that have lost their lives in services." And they stood and looked at the plaque for a while. And then Alex said, "Which one, the 9 o'clock or the 11 o'clock?" Well, you can only do this on Memorial Day, so that's what happens. So we have Memorial Day. Who knows what the Memorial Day was first called? What's it called? No. Decoration Day. You're right. Rob got it. Decoration Day. So how many of you know when it started, why it started, and who started it? I thought we wouldn't have too many hands. So, of course, I'm going to give you a history lesson. You never know what you're going to get here at Unity Santa Fe. So it was actually at the end of the Civil War, and there were dead folks everywhere, some in half-buried coffins, and some visible only as bones that were strewn on the killing fields of Georgia or Virginia. Americans, both South and North, faced enormous spiritual and logistical challenges of memorializing those that have passed. The dead were visible by their massive absence. Approximately 620,000 soldiers died in the war. American deaths in all wars combined through the Korean War totaled 606,000. If the same number of Americans per capita had died in Vietnam as died in the Civil War, 4 million names would be on the Vietnam Memorial. After a long siege, a prolonged bombardment for months all around the harbor, the port of Charleston, South Carolina, was in ruin. The city was largely abandoned by the white folks in late February, and among the first troops to enter Charleston were the 21st U.S. Colored Infantry. And thousands of black Charlestonians, mostly former slaves, remained in the city and conducted a series of commemorations. The largest of this, and unknown, was on May 1st, 1865. During the final year of the war, the Confederates had converted the Planters Horse Track, which was called the Washington Race Course and Jockey Club, into an outdoor prison. Union soldiers were kept in horrible conditions, and at least 257 died of exposure and disease and were hastily buried behind the grandstand. Some 28 black workmen went to the site and reburied the Union properly and built a fence around the cemetery. Then the black Charlestonians, in cooperation with the white missionaries and teachers, staged an unforgettable parade of 10,000 people on the slaveholders' race course. A New York Tribune correspondent witnessed the event and said a procession of friends and mourners as South Carolina and the United States never saw before. So it was at 9 a.m. on May 1st. The procession, led by 3,000 black school children, carrying arms of roses and singing John Brown's Body. The children were followed by several hundred black women with baskets of flowers, wreaths, and crosses. And then came the black men who were marching in cadence. And they came around the enclosure and they were singing, "We Rally Around the Flag." and they had some spirituals. And after this solemn dedication, they dispersed and they started to have picnics and listen to speeches and such. The war was over, and Declaration Day had been founded by the African Americans in a ritual of remembrance and concentration. Who knew, right? Officially as a national holiday, Memorial Day emerged in 1868 when General John A. Logan of the Grand Army of the Republic called on all former Northern soldiers and their communities to conduct ceremonies and decorate graves of their dead comrades. Over time, the American towns, North and South, claimed to be the birthplace of Memorial Day. However, the actual recognition goes to the African Americans in Charleston. Did you know that? Okay, remember it for next year because I'll probably tell it again. No. However, Memorial Day is known as the beginning of summer. Some of you wear shorts today because it's the official start of summer, and it's picnics and barbecues, right? And gatherings often for Memorial Day weekend. However, it's much more. It is a remembrance, and it's a day of prayer, which many people just gloss over. It was in 1950, May 11th, that a joint resolution was made by Congress requesting that the president issue a proclamation to observe Memorial Day as a day of prayer for permanent peace. A day of prayer for permanent peace. Presidents ever since, including President Barack Obama, have obliged with such an annual proclamation in the days just before the late May holiday. In addition to the day of prayer designation, the proclamation also prescribed a specific time period, traditionally at 11 a.m. at each locality, as a time for Americans to unite in prayers for peace. So I am going to invite you tomorrow, and even if you don't do it at 11 a.m., I'll be at the gym. I don't think I'm going to stop at the gym and go, wait, I have to do my prayer. It's 11 o'clock. But I will do it at noon, right? So I will be doing prayers. And I have a prayer that I would like to share with you now. So I'm going to invite you to close your eyes and take a breath. And this is written by Frederick Rousseau. It is entitled, Prayer for All Those Trying to Keep the Peace. We remember in our prayers this special day all those military personnel who died during wartime, putting their lives on the line for their loved ones and for the cause of freedom. We are thankful to them for trying to keep the peace according to their inner lights. We also cannot forget the many combatants who died in the line of friendly fire and the ordeal their families went through to find the truth. We are thankful to them for trying to keep the peace according to their inner lights. We are grateful for the bravery and conviction of nonviolent men and women who refused to go to war and suffered the consequences of their stand. We are thankful to them for trying to keep the peace according to their inner lights. We respect all those resilient souls who have spent their lives protesting against war and paid the price with their own loss of freedom. We are thankful to them for trying to keep the peace according to their inner lights. We mourn the deaths of innocent civilians caught in the crossfire of war. We remember as well the animals, plants, and waters destroyed by the weapons of war. All we wanted was the combat to cease so they could live with dignity. We are thankful to them for trying to keep the peace according to their inner lights. On this Memorial Day of remembrance and reconciliation, we are confident that God has taken all these men, women, and beings into her warm embrace. We hold them all in our hearts and are thankful to them for trying to keep the peace according to their inner lights. And so it is. Do we have anyone in the sanctuary or in the cyber sanctuary who has served in any of the armed forces? If so, if you could stand so that we can honor and thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much for your service, and anyone in the cyber sanctuary. How many of you know someone who has served in the armed forces? Isn't that amazing? I see almost every hand go up. So we all know somebody who has served and has maybe lost their life or still is in their body, but has taken that upon themselves. They chose to be part of something bigger and had a cause. So whether we know a person's name or not, they have all left a legacy, and they have all impacted our lives in some way. I'm going to talk about leaving a legacy and what that is. The definition of legacy: a gift of property, personal property, money by a will or a trust. You probably knew that. And 2 is anything handed down from the past, as from an ancestor or a predecessor, or something that is part of your history that remains from an earlier time. But there is another deeper recognition of what legacy is. Legacy actually means to be remembered. You know, every one of us will leave a legacy, regardless if anybody remembers our names. Leaving a legacy is all about what we leave behind. You know, some people think it's morbid to think of one's legacy. However, it isn't, because if I'm thinking about what happens after I leave, what impact did I make upon the world? Did I make a difference? Did you make a difference? We can ask ourselves. And we might think, not really, because we think of the famous people. You know, everything we do leaves an impact, whether it's good or bad. Some of the famous people that have left their legacies are people like Mother Teresa. Who else? Martin Luther King. George Washington. Come on, you can say a few that are known. Gandhi. Say again? Mother Mary. Yeah, Buddha, Jesus. How about Walt Disney? These are people that have left a legacy and have impacted the world on some level. Painters, musicians, the Beatles, they have impacted us on some level. And then we have those that have that have had bad behavior, to say the least, that also have left a legacy. For instance, Hitler, right? So who else? Mussolini. Anybody else? Who? Genghis Khan. So here's the truth. Whatever you're doing is making an impact, whether you're famous and known or whether you are not. We cannot not leave a legacy. Yes, there's a double. So you cannot go through the world without leaving a legacy. You're leaving a legacy whether you know it or not. And that's why I want to bring this, because we're about raising consciousness. And I want to give you something to think about this week about what is your legacy? What do you want to be remembered for? How are you making an impact in the world? And to know what your legacy is, it does impact our lives. What it means to leave a legacy is to put a stamp on the future and make a contribution to future generations, making a difference. When you know what your legacy is, what you want to make, what you want to be remembered for, or how you, even if you aren't remembered, you have impacted people in what ways. But once you know what your legacy is, you can actually work towards that. You can start living in a way that you want to be remembered. You start doing what matters the most. You make better use of your time and resources. And it reflects and influences your decisions every day. You can have more meaning and purpose, how you show up every day, and living your life knowing that you actually matter. And I don't know if we think that of ourselves, that we matter, that we're making a difference. But you are, whether you know it or not. How many of you have ever heard of the Unity Treasures? Okay, some of you have been around and have some awareness. There is this book, and it is called it's called Unity Treasures. And in this book, they have Unity Treasures. There's another, there it is. I have so many pieces of paper. You can have me in my legacy. She had a lot of pieces of paper. And she juggled them really well. So what the Unity Treasures are, for those of you who don't know, it's the individuals who have made a significant difference in their service to this church for 10 years or more. And they began a Unity Treasures program back in the 1999. So how many of you know Sue Jordan? Oh, good. There are people that have been around for a while. How about Carl and Mildred Wolford? There's a few less. Everett Remers. Okay, Remers. So in September 12th, 1999, these folks were honored. Now, this book, I've been here for 2.5 years. I have never looked at this book. This book is full of people who have left a legacy. I didn't ever take the time until this last week to read this. I'm going to invite you to all take some time. It talks about the Unity Treasures, and each page someone did an interview. There's a photo and the history of these people. They left a legacy. They did some things that you wouldn't know about unless you had been here. But these folks, whether you knew them or not, left a legacy. They served here. They made an impact. And then we had Carol Doherty. In fact, this building, you wouldn't be in it if it wasn't for Carolyn. Okay, I'm just, from what I understand, I wasn't here. I've only been here for 2.5 years. You can read about how she's a legacy. Because of her, you're here. You're in this building. So we have other folks that are in here, and one of our Unity Treasures is actually in the building. Who is it? Janine. Stand up. I don't think she knew she was going to get called out today. Well, that's okay. But you are a Unity treasure, and you were one of the folks that was brought in on August 13th, 2017. And the final person that became a treasure was our previous minister of 26 and a half years, Reverend Bendolyn Batchelor, who was on her 25th anniversary, that she was also honored. So these folks left a legacy. You are leaving a legacy. I want you to really think about that this week. And who has left a legacy in your life? Who has impacted your life? People that might think about your legacy are your parents, because you are their legacy, okay? You are the legacy, regardless of their parenting skills. Just saying that they have left a legacy of you, of me. That was a contribution that they have no idea, perhaps, what they were bringing into the world, but you are a legacy. I want you to turn to the person next to you and say, you are a legacy. You're a legacy. Every one of you is leaving a legacy. What do you want to be remembered for? It doesn't have to be that you, did something big and that can be remembered, but your kindness to a stranger, your being a friend, your being a listening person to another. I think back, and I've been thinking, because I'm doing this talk today, but about the people that have impacted my life. Is there a teacher? Was there a teacher, a mentor, a friend, an aunt, an uncle, a grandparent? I had a grandparent, Dorothy. She got me more than any other relatives. She would always buy me gifts that were me. So she left a legacy, my grandma Dorothy, and she'd always take me out on my birthday. And, as a little kid, would go out with my grandma Dorothy. I don't think she took any of the other kids, the grandkids, but she took me, and she left an imprint on my heart. Last week, I think I talked about my dad doing the best he knew how, but there is a particular person that I mentioned, and his name is Stuart Bloom. And Stuart was a counselor at Cal State Fullerton. And at Cal State Fullerton, he's a character. He taught a class called Character and Conflict. I loved Stuart. He was different. I mean, you walk into the classroom and it was in a circle, okay? We talked about real life things that were happening in the world. And then I took another class and became a counselor. We had group counseling, so we learned how group counseling would work. But he also became, for me, I remember the day that he was trying, I finished my class with him, and so I couldn't have a class and do counseling, but I was going to counseling to him. He was trying to get me in touch with my feelings. Well, I was the type of person who had the motto, don't let it show. I was tough. Don't let it show. Don't let your emotion. So he's trying to get me feel my feelings. Not having a lot of luck. And he's looking at me and he goes, I just feel like holding you like a baby. And I look at him, I'm like, over my dead body. Then he says these words. He goes, I'm willing to pick up my end of the stick. I'm like, if I had a stick, I'd hit you. But here's the thing. Stuart challenged me. He was willing to do his part. I'm like, and a challenge is a thing for me. So it's like, fine. So he moves over out of his chair and onto the couch, and I go over and I sit on the couch and I lean up against his chest, and he puts his arm around me, and I dissolve into tears. I had never experienced a dad who was like that. He became my good daddy. But then I learned how to be the Daddy Liz to little Liz's because he wasn't going to be that, but I got an example. The next week, I took a storybook, a kid's storybook, because I worked in a group home for abused and neglected kids. I said, can you read this to me? Puts his arm around me, reads me this little kid's story. I just cry the whole entire time. One time I go in, and all we did was play. We threw things at each other. We blew bubbles. I got to have the experience of the good daddy. What my dad, and in last week's talk, I said, my dad never had a good daddy. My dad couldn't give me something that he had never had. And that's when I talked about compassion. So Stuart has left a legacy in this person's life. I remember him. We still communicate on Facebook after a 2-year period after completing counseling in various forms. We had to have a period of separation because you don't want to co-mix your friendship with the counseling. But we're still friends. And anyway, so you can make a difference. You are making a difference in other people's lives. Ralph Waldo Emerson, part of his quote is, to leave the world a bit better, whether by a healthy child, a garden patch, or a redeemed social condition. To know even one life has breathed easier because you have lived, this is to have succeeded. You're leaving a legacy. What do you want it to be? This week, I invite you to do prayer for peace tomorrow. I give assignments, yes, you get homework. And then I would like you to think about and contemplate, how do I want to be remembered? Okay? How would I like to be remembered? What's the eulogy going to say? You know, I was the yippee-doo minister. And for those who don't know what that means, I would hope that they say that. She's yippee-doo and yippee-done, right? Because I was done. So what is your legacy? What do you want to be remembered for? I want you to think about the people that have made an impact in your life and wonder who have you made an impact upon? Because you are leaving a legacy, and you are all my hero. And so it is.